Sheldon Keefe rips star players. The rookie line impresses, and the Leafs need to make this change. We'll get into that later on in this episode. But before I start, I just want to say if you're enjoying this daily NHL and Leafs content, make sure to go down, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and we love to see you guys just interacting and enjoying the content. And we're hoping to hit 2,000 by the end of the month. But we'll get straight into it with Leafs stars struggle. This comes with a quote from Sheldon Keefe today, when specifically took issue with the play of the Toronto Stars early in the loss, which ended a two-game win streak to start the season. All of our best players were really careless to start the game, Keefe said, so that didn't give us a chance to take a hold on the game. When you let your opponents hang around, we've seen this movie before. This is a thing as Leafs fans we've felt and seen in the past. They always play down to teams. This is the team that never plays up and they try to roll through teams. We've seen this happen with a team like Montreal and Chicago so far this season. The Leafs are without doubt one of the top Eastern Conference teams. They're one of the best teams in the league, and they should be fighting for this President's Trophy, but we always kind of get into this slump of we'll play down. We don't really need to go fully try hard, if you want to say, against a team like Chicago, Arizona, Montreal. And this kind of leans back onto the star players. We've seen last night Toronto was outshot by Chicago in the first two periods. They really struggled to get anything going, and they just let this unexperienced Chicago team, which does look good, but they kind of let this team dictate the pace of the game. They dictated. They give up a breakaway to Corey Perry. We've seen an early goal for Chicago, and the Leafs could never really rebound off this. We've seen the Gregor fight, which could have kind of sparked the team a little bit. But the Leafs kind of just rolled over and died and never really got themselves back into this game. And it felt like the situation of they were always trailing and never had the effort to get that one goal back, to get the 2 to 3 and to 4 goals, which ultimately we did lose 4-1. I know Sheldon Keefe was impressed with the rookie line. He did have a lot of praise for this line as well. When you look at this article here, he said, I have a lot actually. This is the one thing that has been consistent for them in both games. They defended really well defensively. They were our best line yesterday by far. They give up a lot less of any line. And you kind of look into this. He said he trusted them going through the first, the second, and even into the third period. When the star players kind of fell back a bit, weren't producing, and kind of let the game slip out of their hands, we've seen this line of Nyes, Mitten, and Domi kind of make their impact on this team. They kind of went out there, they played hard every shift defensively, they looked great. I thought they had a lot of chances as well. I know this line hasn't produced at a high rate or at a rate really at all, but we're having a lot of growing pains with this team. We've seen Yarncroke on this line, it looked great. I know Keefe did move Yarncroke up to the second line and Domi down. This was more of a thing not to really make Domi demote himself or a thing of promoting Yarncroke. They just wanted a more defensive-sounded guy on the second line, with Yarncroke being with Tavares and Marner. And you see Domi kind of move down. He showed flashes of his offense. And with this third line showing so much defensive promise, just forechecking hard, Domi's going to fit in perfectly. I think this is a situation where we'll see a bit of untapped offense coming from this line with a playmaker like Domi down here. But it kind of makes you worried and you get scared on the Leafs do need to make a change. When you look at this team, like I said, they have the star power. They have the depth. The goalies are good. The defense should be good on paper. But when you ultimately look at how they've performed, in 3 games, they've scored 14 goals, which is an outstanding output of goals when you look at the end of the day. But they've allowed 13 goals on the season so far. And this kind of relies back on your defense. The defense is a new look team. There's a lot of new faces. We've seen some struggle. If you just look at Jake McCabe so far this season, in 3 games, he's a -5. He has no takeaways. He has 2 giveaways. He has 2 blocks and 3 hits. And you kind of look at this guy. Last year, he looked incredible for the Leafs. Down the stretch, he looked great. Just at a $2 million cap hit, this is a guy we have to keep, but so far we've seen that this McCabe and Klingberg line hasn't worked. It hasn't looked great. Klingberg does look good offensively, but McCabe and him are struggling. And when you kind of look at this team, I think there needs to be a change. With this change, when the top line, you look at Austin and Mitch are still here. This is where I would promote Domi to the top line. Austin's a guy that's played on the penalty kill. Mitch is a Selke winner. And when you look at Domi, this is a guy that can put out a lot of offense, but his defensive game obviously has a tiny bit of holes in it. So if you put this with a guy in Matthews who's just flourishing on defense this year, a guy that's a Selkie winner. And two of these guys are putting out a high output. We see 6 goals from Matthews already. I think if you put Domi on this line and you run this three-headed guys, Domi with the passing, grittiness, you still have Austin Matthews, which is the best goal scorer in the league, and a guy like Mitch that plays both ends of the pucks. And I'd also slide Matthew Nyes up to the second line. We've seen this work last season where Tavares, Nyes, and Nylander did look good. And I think this is the thing. We're seeing such a development in Matthew Nyes' games. He's hard in the corners. He's using his size. He's throwing his weight around. And this is a situation where I would like him up with a more offensively gifted line where you get more offense out of Tavares and Nylander than you've got so far out of Yarncroke and Mitten. And it kind of spreads out the scoring a bit. You get this guy up, he produces better, and he adds the more defensive and grittiness to this line than a guy like Domi or Yarncroke. And this is where I would slide Tyler Bertuzzi down to the third line with Fraser Mitten and Calle Yarncroke. We've seen this line so far. Mitten and Yarncroke have looked outstanding together. Defensively, they've looked great. They've forechecked hard, and they've got a lot of chances. Bertuzzi is a guy that kind of struggled. He only has 1 goal on the season. He's taken, I think it was 5 minor penalties so far. So maybe if you put him down into this third line role, you get more offense out of Bertuzzi than you've got so far out of maybe a guy like Matthew Nyes or a guy like Noah Gregor if you wanted to promote him up a line. But I think a guy like Bertuzzi, Mitten, and Calle Yarncroke, you get so much defense out of a guy like Fraser Mitten and Calle Yarncroke, and you still get this scoring, grittiness, and just this new look to this line with a guy like Bertuzzi, just to kind of slot in, see if this line works, and ultimately they need to do something. We've seen the output has only really come from the top 6, and we need to spread this out. We can't just continuously have Matthews score a hat trick to win games. When you look at the fourth line, this is the line I would 100% keep the same. And on the defense, Riley and Brody, I think, have looked fine this year. But this is where I would put up a guy like Timothy Liljegren onto the line with Jake McCabe and drop Klingberg back to Mark Giordano. In this situation, I think Liljegren has looked outstanding this year. He's been responsible in his own end. He's made great outlook passes. But his offense hasn't really hit the full potential yet. So you put a guy like him and Jake McCabe, let them feed off each other, get the feeling of playing great defense back. And you could drop a guy like John Klingberg down to this third pairing with a more responsible guy like Mark Giordano. This line here, you still get John Klingberg on your power play. Maybe you drop his minutes a tiny bit just to get more of an offensive output from him. Don't start him in defensive ends. But this is the thing where Klingberg still gets his ice time on the power play. You can still start him up with Jake McCabe or maybe Morgan Riley if you need more offense at the end of a shift, end of a period, or just when you're hounding a team. And this is just kind of the point of the Leafs have so much talent throughout this lineup, and it's just not fair to a guy like Joseph Woll or Samsonov who have let these 13 goals go in the first 2 games, because you see a lot of the time the team's not gelling completely. Yes, we're getting the scoring from Matthews. Yes, Marner's looking good. We're still getting Tavares. Nylander's looking off his head this season so far. But the defense has struggled, and I think there has to be a change here. We do have Benoit that can be called up and maybe play on the third line if you wanted to give Giordano a little break. But I think the Leafs do need to start looking at maybe making this next inquiry on a defenseman. I kept saying maybe wait till trade deadline, but I think this is a situation. If there's a disgruntled star, maybe look at a guy like Brett Pesce from Carolina. If one of these guys come available, I feel like you need to take that chance. You need to jump on one of these guys right away. Obviously, it's the start of the year. There's no point to completely panic. We're 2-1, but you don't want to wait on this. If this is something that can't figure itself out going into Christmas or maybe in a trade deadline, and you lose your chances on a guy like Zdorov, Brett Pesce, or anyone like this, you might just kind of shoot yourself in your leg in the situation of being stuck like this. If these guys aren't producing, like I said, or playing great defensively, you kind of get stuck in a bad situation. But we'll get into everyone's favorite topic here, which is comments of the day. The comment of the day today comes from Daniel. Daniel said, "Last night game was not on Wall. He did his best. If anyone can find our decor, let me know at this rate. Our goalies are in for a long season." And I can't agree with this more. Like I said, they need to mesh. There has to be some sort of change. We've seen Klingberg look great offensively. Him and McCabe, I don't think can be a pairing. We've seen the struggles. We've seen the -5 by Jake McCabe. And overall, I think you move Liljegren up, you drop Klingberg, and you just need to be actively looking at other teams You have a couple of prospects in the AHL, but there's no defensive prospects that you maybe call up and trust more than a guy like Liljegren, Klingberg, McCabe, or Giordano. So I think this is where you need to start looking at other teams. I think a team like Arizona as well. Matt Dumba signed his 1 year deal there for $4 million. I think this is a guy that's going to be actively shopped throughout the season. So you just need to take your options. You need to look around the league. And they just can't continue this scoring 7 goals and allowing 6 win in the game as well. You kind of bite yourself in the butt, and you can't look at this output from a guy like Matthews and Marner, them scoring your 4 goals in a 6-5 win. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions at all, let us know. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and take care.